the mindset never changes. My wife has brought this up. She's like, you get so locked in on a goal, like you'll do whatever it takes for that goal. And that's my personality. And I've had to take a step back and at certain times and look at the bigger picture. Like, this can't be what my life is centered around. So I have to do it within reason. But the drive is always there. That's what made me who I was. That's what we saw. You know, you saw in the basement days, like that was there. It was going all in on a goal. So in a sense, I'd like to be as good as I can at this within reason, without letting it affect relationships and you know, dip into that.
See, I think that in my case, that goal strategy, that you're having something, you know, to have that kind of like all in focus on, is the important aspect. Because if I don't have something like that, it's a problem. You know, so you got to kind of be looking for that. But at the same time, remember that we come into this world with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. You know, and in between there, if that you have that mindset, this is the tricky part. It's like, how long do you stay with that one thing? Because at a certain point, it will become destructive, no matter what it is, especially if you've been through it a couple times. It's like, okay, here, this is great. This is awesome. It's my identity. I'm kicking all kinds of ass. And then when you look back in hindsight, it's like, ooh, right at that point is when it really started to fuck up everything else. You know, but I wasn't looking for what that next thing could be, because that's going to pull you away from what you're fucking doing. You get what I'm saying? So it's the fucked up part. It's like you can't get out until either therapy or some shit, I don't know, psychedelics, shit I didn't do, but you can't get out until it kicks you out. Mm-hmm. Right? Then when it kicks you out, you're like, fuck, now what? And then you got to search, you know, for that. And you try different things, you know, to try to find that thing you can grab onto. Like, okay, that's it. There's something I can work for. Right. And I think that's so hard because you suck at so much, because you're so good at one thing. So when you're really good at that powerlifting or that one thing, it's like, okay, fuck it, I'll try running. And then you go, you know, skip down the trail for 100 yards, like, fuck this. And you forget you suck that bad at one point at the lifting too. But you also know, because you've been through this path, this, just to get to where I'd want to be competitive, this is going to take like 5 fucking years. Do I really want to do this? That's the tricky part. That's the navigation of like, is this going to be it, or is it something else? You know, maybe you go to a gun range and you fucking can't hit the target. You're like, this sucks. You know, do I really want to spend 5 years on this? Because you're looking for something that you can have, you know what I'm saying? That you can have that with. And family's important. All these other things are important. You can balance Christ, family, all these other things, but there's still that one thing that certain people have to have, you know, to be in there. And if you don't have it, or if you stay with it too long, let's say you just would have said, fuck it, and just kept powerlifting over it, think of how fucked up you really would be. Mm. And so the running's kind of that way now. It's like you're getting into that, you're going to get in this really cool bubble, you know, and it could be 10 years, who knows when it's going to be, but then it's going to be like, man, this is fucking me all up. And then it's like, what's the next thing?
Do you think that important for you both here, do you think an important factor though with feeling driven in that new endeavor is having a goal to aim at? Like you mentioned, the running at first, take it or leave it, not great, until you started doing events. And then all of a sudden there's this path that you have to be on your A game on this one day, right? Similar to how you would a competition. Dave, I know like your training cycle right now is like you have a certain squat goal. Mm-hmm. And if that wasn't there, what would happen to your training cycle? Do you think, you know, so a big part of it is not just finding what doesn't make all these sacrifices and hinder you, but also making sure you attach some kind of goal to it. Otherwise you are just going to kind of be flailing around with this new endeavor, whatever it is.
I would say, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, it has to be some type of anchored goal, but it has to be an anchored goal that you have more control of than you would say something else. Like, we have a certain degree of control over health, but not so much control that my health is going to be the number one overall goal. Like, longevity is kind of like a stupid fucking goal. right? You can do that, then you're going to get cancer out of fucking nowhere. Whatever. It's not a bad thing, but for me, that doesn't have enough bite that I have control over that. The business doesn't have enough bite that I have control over it because there's so many factors that are out of your control. Where with running time, you know, or a race or something like that, or squatting a weight at a certain body weight, may or may not happen, but I have way more control over the outcome than the other things.
Yeah, I think with me, there has to be a specific thing I'm working towards, like a race. If I were just going out and running, I'm like, what am I doing? So in that sense, like running just for the sake of like trying to be healthy, that's all well and good. And obviously we want to be as healthy as possible and live a fairly long time. But I'm in agreement where it's like I need a race. I need something that like, this is the deadline. It puts pressure on you. It sharpens you. That's what brings out the best. And I think, and it is a thing where you can get so encompassed in a goal, it can get destructive. That's 100%. And powerlifting was that way, when I was on trend and such, and I was out of control, wasn't controlling my emotions well on it and that sort of thing. And it was messing up relationships and priorities, and everything was going by the wayside. And I do think about like, where would I be if I kept down that road? Who knows? Could be really bad. And that's part of the reason, like, I tried the one ultra and it was getting to that point. It was getting to where it's like, this is going to be a serious problem on family, on time. I can't be doing these ultras. This is ridiculous. Like I wanted to do this 100-mile race. That's a whole nother story. Didn't even finish it. Got 66 miles in, learned a lot. But the training was so extensive that I remember one week it was like 16 hours of running. And it just started getting like, you'll be like, all right, I'll see you in 8 hours. Like you go out for a long run. I'll be back in 8 hours. It doesn't work. Not if you have a family and such. And I would always try to overlap these periods with when my daughter was napping and justify things. But it got to where I'm like, I could see if you're always training for an ultra or something of that nature, it's going to become unhealthy, the time commitment, that sort of thing. And that's where I pivoted back to marathons. I'm like, I can kind of do this where it's not really interfering with family time. I'm not gone forever. And it's not in that regard. So for me, the marathon's like the perfect distance where maybe at the end of a prep, you have some longer runs where your longest run is 3 hours, but that's only maybe, let's say 4 times you're doing that. And the rest of the time, it's like you might be an hour, might be hour and a half, and that's about it. And I can do that when I put my daughter down for a nap. She's 3 now. So that's a lot more sustainable. But I'm in agreement where it can get out of hand, and I had to really step back and look at that. The ultra definitely put a little friction in things where it's like you're gone for so long. It's so encompassing. Everything revolves around it because it's such a big goal, and it can get a little dangerous where you're sliding back down that path, like with powerlifting, where it's your whole life.
Had you not done that with powerlifting, do you think you would have had the foresight to see that coming with this? The reason I ask this is a lot of people talk about how they'll go all in on something. And then when I'll talk to people who have really gone all in on something, then I ask them, are they willing to do that with something else again? The answer is usually no.
No.
Right? So I wonder if you have to go through that to be able to know this can be that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think part of it's age too. In my 20s, we've talked about this. Someone could tell you a life lesson. Like when I was doing the UPA meets and I was, 18 years old, 19 years old. And if someone, there were a lot of lifters doing geared lifting who were in their 30s at the time. And I thought they were so old. And like, you're not going to listen to them. And now you're that guy. And so I think a lot of it is youth. You got to go through it. You have to learn the hard way. But any goal can get destructive. It can take over. No, I wouldn't do that again. It's one of those things. I think it's good to have a goal. It's good to have an outlet, but you also have to look at the big picture. It's not everything. Nobody even cares like what you're doing. At the end of the day, people don't care necessarily about your progress, your lifts, whatever you're doing. It's no one's worrying about it. It doesn't matter to them. So you got to ask yourself, why am I doing it?
When you are getting these kind of higher performers or valuable individuals, what is your real goal as a strength coach? Because many will look at that and be like, put as many plates on the bar and get them strong, and or do all this cool Instagram shit, with them like doing 10-yard dashes after doing deadlift with chains, or what I mean, right?
Yeah.
What is your day to day? What is your actual role if you do it well?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's keep them deployable, keep them not injured. Like it's. And a lot of times, like when you oversimplify like that, a lot of people, they're like, well, wait a second, how do I fuck that up? And it's like, dude, that's literally, because these individuals, like when you look at a professional athlete and you look at like professional operators and pilots, and like you look at the training dumped into them, that's 7 figures. Like each individual is worth 7 figures. And then also the way I explain it to them, because like a lot of them, it's tough, like when you're talking to somebody that's dropping bombs and shooting guns, and like when you're talking to somebody who's doing that for a living, it's so hard to tell them to think past their nose, because like you're like, hey bud, like let's think about next week. And he's like, motherfucker, like I gotta go do this shit. And it's like, yeah, you should probably be pretty focused on that. So you have to be focused further down the line, where a lot of them I like make sure like we know you're capable of doing what you're doing because you as an operator like made it through your pipeline. And a lot of coaches, they try to cherry pick that and go like, I made this operator this. And it's like, no, like again, his fucking parents and the shit in his neck, like the stuff in between his ears is what makes him good at that. So my job is to make sure he does that as long as he wants, and to make sure that his quality of life is good for his wife and kids, and that hopefully he can like toss a ball with his grandkids someday. And that's where I'm talking to them, and I'm like, hey, like I'm more your insurance policy than your performance, because we know you're a higher performer. If you're in the setting, you are a high performer. I'm here to think about the shit that you're not thinking about. But then what's funny is the side effect of that is they get really fucking strong. Like when you focus on like making sure this dude is just durable, your strength numbers a lot of times, like organically, if you're lifting the right movements, because again, like what's funny is like with a lot of my teams I work with, like you've never seen on the program a bench press, a squat, or a deadlift in those words. Every variation of it. We've never done a straight up bench. We do a lot of closed grip. We do a lot of we can alphabet soup that all day. If you want to hear 100 variations of bench press, like hit us up on a separate Q&A. But you hit all those variations of it, and the side effect of the good health and the durability and the low injury rates is going to be big numbers. And I'd talk to you about what's funny is like sometimes on these, like you can find the data pretty easy, and like I don't even like that fucking word, and I'm going to get made fun of by a lot of people know me close for even saying that word. But you can pull all these metrics on the back end very easy and go, okay, so like we had this deployment, and everybody who came back from this deployment who benched over 300 pounds has healthy shoulders. Everybody who came back from this deployment who deadlifts over 500 pounds has a healthy back. Oh, the dudes who are crying about their shoulders and back and their face down, ass up on the PT table are the ones avoiding getting strong. It's an easy, like, it's like one of these things doesn't look like the other. And like, so it's easy to find these answers to training for injury prevention.
Sure. So when you bullet pointed your philosophy, you mentioned neck and grip, right? Okay. So with those being, and there are 3 things you mentioned, right? So neck and grip were 2/3 of what you noted. How did you come to that conclusion? And how did that become so ingrained in how you train people?
So when you take over a population, the first thing I do is, and I learned for some awesome dudes at like how you read the athlete, the lifter. And when you take over that unit or like whatever it may be, talk to your oldest, most beat up dudes, talk to everybody and ask them what hurts, ask them what injuries are you worried about? What injuries have you had? And then draw conclusions of what do they need to be thinking about, because there might be some injuries they're not even thinking about. And so when I had talked to the first unit I started working with, like, hey, what hurts? And everybody, neck, every single one. You ask them, hey, what are you doing for your neck training? And they just stare at you. And you're like, fucking, this is going to be easy. Like, okay. Anybody who's been around like a masculine, or not to like a physical population like football, wrestling, fighting, like neck is like mandatory. And so when you're talking to these dudes who are wearing helmets and NVGs and even like these pilots too, and they're all in odd, awkward positions with something on their head, and if it's night, it's even heavier. Like, okay, that is not hard to figure out. For me, at least, I was like, 100 reps before bed of neck, just in case I dream of yoke. And so that was a big one where, like, when I talk to a ground unit, so if I'm talking to operators, everybody's got neck issues. If I'm talking to a flying unit, everybody has neck issues. And except for, like, shout out to all my dudes doing it right, because it was funny, we did the NDI survey for like neck pain and stuff, and it was so funny because my folks were such a waste of everybody's time to do that, because they all scored zeros. Like, we train neck, our necks feel great. And so we had to find more people in this survey who don't train neck to find anybody with neck pain. So that was that. And then the grip part marries itself on your absolute strength is going to carry over to grip. And especially in these populations for like operators, every mission set, you're carrying shit. Mandatory. Like, it's happening. You are never slick. You're always going to have external load on, and you're always carrying something. Those two things are always happening. And so it's kind of, I don't want to, like, you figure it out. Like, they have shit on their head, they're carrying stuff, and they're wearing stuff. Let's put on some muscle mass, get grips, get a strong neck. And then with a lot of the assessment selections they do, like at a tier 1 assessment selection, some of them may be carrying things for over 30 miles. And so you're carrying jerry cans in each hand for over 30 miles with load. We should probably get some pretty strong crotch beaters. And it's a good metric for like fatigue as well. So I have a lot of guys, like, if they're like auto-regulating their training that day, just squeeze your fist. Mm-hmm. And you're going to know exactly what you need to adjust that day.
Sure. You mentioned this, they both kind of feed into each other now. So, like, you mentioned kind of your job is keep them deployable, keep them playing, whatever, game day ready, whatever. The grip and the neck training, were kind of two key elements there that you kind of identified as common weak points that lead to them not being deployable or game ready. So if we're looking at your job as almost like a durability or a robustness or resiliency coach, what other facets do you think feed into creating resilient athletes? As general principles, is there an aspect of like putting them in positions that are purposely outside of normal ranges of motion or traditional like linear or bilateral lifts, etc.? Like, how do you go about creating someone who's bulletproof, for want of a better way of putting it?
So I think the range of motion part, I think get them as strong as hell in the range of motions they need. And I mean, so like, that's kind of a double-edged sword of like, be strong as a human in all of your range of motions that you have, or for your sport or demand, be as strong as you can in those range of motions. I think where some people are like going off the deep end on that is like, they're getting strong in what I call jackass range of motion. So they're like, there's a lot of these like weird trends where it's like, we're going to get suitcase strong. And like, you see, but it's so funny because you see them, I'm not trying to like bash influencers or anything, but like, you see these dudes on Instagram and like, they're doing this like these crazy workouts, but you see their page and it's on nobody. And there's no athletes doing this. And it's like, why the hell would you listen to, because this dude is obviously arrogant enough where if he was doing this with anybody, it's obviously going to be on his page. And so it doesn't work. And so that's where, like, circling back, like as an athlete or an operator pilot, like, you have to go like, one, is this even being done with anybody? And two, how would I apply this to me? So get as strong as you can in those range of motions, which again, circle back bodybuilding, like train to full range of motion, stretch contraction. Like it's not that hard.
When I hear people talk about this, there's they don't define exactly what they're talking about, right? So there's elbow, like bone spur on the actual elbow, like sitting your elbow down hurts like a bitch. But then there's also bicep tendonitis, which people will define both of those as elbow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, here's what you need to do to fix your elbow problem.
Right.
And they're two entirely different fucking things.
Well, I have the most experience with golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. So the golfer's elbow is on the inside of your forearm, and then the tennis elbow is on the outside. So the things that I have done, so I've had that probably more than anybody, because when I started out, like I said, I'd done all this stuff. So I was doing strongman training, stone lifting, keg lifting, steel bending, pinching, all this stuff. So
how did it manifest in you to fuck up your training? Because when I would have that, like lowering a barbell to bench was, oh my God.
Horrible. The benching, curling, rowing, any machine exercise that I did, nothing worked. Nothing worked well, pain-free.
I mean, you could go fast, you could go slow. It didn't make any difference. It still hurt like a bitch.
So the first time I fixed it was with sledgehammer rotations, just gripping a sledgehammer and lowering it back and forth in pronation and supination. Now, again, it's not like the challenge that you're going to see from some influencer on Instagram. You're not taking a 20-pound sledgehammer and holding it by the bottom of the handle. I'm talking about like literally 2 or 3 inches from the head of a 6 or 8 pound hammer, and you just guide it down into, and it's going to hurt, but the area seems to need, in my experience, I'm not a doctor, but in my experience, I've needed to address the area by stimulating it and getting blood flow into the area. So, and I had double tennis elbow and double golfer's elbow. So both elbows were screwed up on both sides
at the same time.
Yes. And after 2 weeks of doing sledge rotations, they were fine. I fixed them and they were fine for months. Another time I don't think it was tennis elbow.
Well, with that first time, did you change your training after it was fixed, or did you continue to do the same shit?
What do you think?
I know. I'm just, because there's a part here that people miss.
Yeah.
Like, you got to figure out why it happened in the first place.
That's worth talking about. So
let's keep going on your different modalities first, and then we'll go back.
Okay. So there was another time where I got these. So there was a company selling these rubber bands it was for $20. You got like 5 pairs of rubber bands, and I didn't want to do that. So I went to just an office store and got their number 84 rubber bands.
Extensors?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you put them on your fingers and then you extend. So I have something when I work with grip athletes, one of the days to promote forearm recovery, I have them do what I call a rubber band battery. Do you have a rubber band sitting around?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
So I'll do 20 extensions. Your forearm is going to burn like a son of a bitch. 20 extensions. Then you hold the last one and you extend your wrist 10 times. And then you hold it and then you extend or rotate either way 10 times. So I just call it a rubber band battery. It's like 20, 40 repetitions. And that is what fixed my elbows the second time. So I consequently did that for a long time afterwards.
Well, that seems a lot easier than the sledgehammer, because you can carry a rubber band where you go.
Yeah. The other thing that I found that worked really well for me, and it fixed my elbow one time. Like that's I'm kind of saying, like, this isn't the same injury every time. Reverse curls, like overhand curls on an easy curl bar. Like something snapped inside my arm and it was fixed right away. But for like 3 years, I did those once a week. Nothing crazy heavy, like 2 or 3 sets of 10 or 12. And I'm just trying to flush the area full of blood. And then, believe it or not, in it was 06 or 07, there was a competition in Posodum, Illinois. It was the Backyard Bastard Bash.
These are the greatest names.
Some of the names are fantastic. One of the events was steel bending, and I was like, I don't know how this contest is going to go. Like, I've been training, but I'm in all this pain. Dude, the second
the second event was steel bending, and as I'm bending, something in one of my forearms like released and like went back to where it was supposed to be or something. My pain was gone. I fixed it at that contest. So and I had been to chiropractors and stuff, like they're trying to manipulate the heads and stuff, but I don't know, something when I hit that that bar real hard, so it ended up fixing it. But the reverse curls were part of my training for years straight. The rubber band, I haven't done that in a long time, but I think at this point I'm better at listening to myself and understanding what like these higher risk lifts are. So I either avoid them completely or I just limit the volume, and I just haven't had a problem with them.
So that would be the advice in the prevention of all that.
Oh, for sure. Is like, obviously with experience, you'll know what's going to hurt you more than something else. And then like extreme joint angles are probably something to be aware of. Like one time I had the bright idea to take a block weight and put it up. Like we were doing these like reps, loading it almost like a strongman stone, an Atlas stone up on this platform. And I don't know what I did. I did something to my forearm up in here. That's really the last time that I had an elbow issue, and it was probably 2012. So just being aware that this is actually a really high risk motion, but I was kind of stunting. I was like feeting. It was like a feet loaded up there. So instead of doing it once, I'm going to try to do it twice and 3 times. But I guess the point is you try to be aware of these movement patterns that are higher risk than others. And really anytime you're bringing your elbow up like this, you could potentially mess your shoulder up anyway. So, but it got my elbow that one particular time.
I think another preventative movement that can kind of help with this is a lot of the people that I'll see that will complain about these issues have lost the ability to just do a barbell curl with a straight bar.
Oh, dude, I can't do that.
Because they can't supinate, right? So being able to maintain that mobility, and if it's lost, start with like a dowel rod with as wide as you possibly can, and then try to get it to where you can bring it back in. Yeah. Because, I mean, you have to think that if you can't do this, right, at all, and then you're put in a position that forces you to do that, something's going to aggravate.
For sure. Yeah. Good point. Makes me actually want to get my dowel rod out and do something with it. So
well, what I find with most people is they'll hear that, then they're going to go try to grab a bar and their curl grip, and they're like, fuck, I can't do this. Like, well, you start with a dumbbell if you have to, and just crank it as much as you can possibly tolerate without it being stupid insane.
Yeah. I've gone the opposite way. So instead of actually trying to fix my supinated grip, I have these like spheres that go onto the bar, and it almost turns the barbell into like an easy curl bar.
Well, sometimes though, and this is interesting because personally I like the cupping attachments, even if it's doing, cable, face curls and stuff like that, because I can take the forearm out of it and get more isolated on the bicep. Yeah. Because that's not closed. Yep. And the same thing with a lot of the lat work. I can have more intention on the lats if that's not locked in, which isn't going to do shit for my grip, right? Yeah. But that's not what I'm trying to train, right? Yeah. Because it's lower end hypertrophy training, which I always kind of see that as a strength athlete, where if it's lower end of day, training day hypertrophy work, then you don't have to show off with how much you can lift. You're just trying to stimulate this muscle and have the mechanical tension that can be controlled with tempo, all kinds of shit. Yeah. That doesn't have to be the whole fucking weight stack on a lat machine, and that can be done earlier.
I love going to a gym though and just stacking every machine, but
Well, it's interesting with that because that can have some grip applications too, where if you're doing the lat pull downs and your first couple sets are done with decent technique, mechanical tension and all that, then you do a couple more sets where you're just muscle fucking it down. That, I'm not going to say that's not going to work, right? Because if anything, it's got grip applications, and hell, you can make it a total body exercise if you want. I did for years.
Yep. It seemed to work pretty well for you.
Yeah, it looked fucking cool. But with you have 3 pillars of the technique. So what are those 3?
Yeah, so we break down technique into what I call biomechanical rules. And I guess the basis this comes from is that you're built differently to me, I'm built differently to you, but we're the same animal doing the same movement. You have a shoulder, I have a shoulder, you have a hip, I have a hip. If you fuck up your shoulder and go to the doctor or the physical therapist, they don't take a photo, a measurement, an MRI, an X-ray, CT scan, send it away, get a perfect model made of Dave's shoulder and be like, hey, Dave, here's your shoulder. Here's what's fucked about it. Everything. No, they just pull out a shoulder model from under the desk. They're like, you're a human. You have a shoulder. This is how a shoulder works. This is what we're going to do to fix it. But in powerlifting coaching, we're like, you're a special snowflake. We need to change this for you because of your leverages here or there or whatever. Let's stop focusing on what's different. Let's look at what's the same and build a model around what's the same. And when we look at what's the same, you start to notice really defined trends in each lift. And this is how we arrive at these 3 biomechanical rules. Rule number 1 in any of the 3 lifts is always, where does the power come from? Rule number 2 is part of transferring that power into the bar, which is breathing and bracing for all 3 lifts. And rule number 3 is about connecting the dots at the end there. So on squat and deadlift, rule number 1 is going to be about muscles of legs and hips. That's where the power's coming from. Rule number 2, breathing, bracing. Rule number 3 is what you're doing with your upper back. In bench press, it's just reverse because the power's coming from here, right? So rule number 1 is about how do we stabilize and create that. Now, this has been born of problem solving, which is looking at lifts and being like, I see this breakdown happening. Why is that happening? And that's tied in with cueing, because how cueing generally starts is you talk about what you see. Your elbows are moving there, let's move your elbows here. Your knees are moving there, let's move your knees here. I never liked that. I always thought, why are the knees moving there? What does that represent? We get to the root cause. Okay, there's the root cause. How do we address the root cause? And when we start addressing the root cause, it's the same on everyone and every lift. So my ridiculous claims, I can fix any problem on every lift, because there's not many of them. There's only like 3, there's only 3 or 4 breakdowns that happen. They just look different. If you're working with your guys who are fucking gigantic and tight, it looks different than a 56 kilo female who's squatting like Bambi. It's just more accentuated. Yeah. So it looks different on different people and to different scale, but it all points back to the same, essentially root cause. And so my process through the years has been playing around with cueing, coming to a deeper understanding of biomechanics, to arrive at, okay, this works, and then rigorously testing that over and over and over in the way I mentioned before, which is how do I see in people where it doesn't work? And then how do I refine the language or my own understanding to arrive to a point that's essentially as one size fits all as possible, which people don't like to hear. People don't like to hear, oh, he's going to coach Colton the same way he coaches Theo with technique, or the same way he coaches Lily with technique. Here's a newsflash. Every single coach on earth does that. They just don't admit it. Like if I got any random coach and showed them a squat and said, tell me what's good or bad about this squat, they'll say the same thing for 10 lifters. If I say, build me a peaking program, they'll write pretty much the same thing. There'll be nuance, there'll be adjustments for sure. There'll be individualization to some degree, but everyone has a framework in their head of what good or bad is. This is why I hate ranges. This is why I hate, a little bit of backgrounding is okay. Why? If a little bit's okay, why isn't a lot not okay? And if a lot's not okay, where's the limit? And how do you define that limit? So what I've essentially done is created a gold standard of what is perfect, and we are always working towards that. And again, I'm always trying to prove it wrong, and I'm fucking annoyed because the longer I go, the more I just prove it right. And until I prove it wrong, I'm not going to change anything. And when I do prove it wrong, which I have over the years, I change a little bit here and there, and I tweak and I improve. That's what you have to do.
So when it comes to the cueing of the technical aspects of the lift, I'll take somebody through and teach them the squat, basically everybody exactly the same way, right? So I'll start with just the bar and just rooting, right? I don't want any weight because I don't want that force. I want them to know what to do with their feet. Basically, I'll start from the feet and work up. So from the feet, then to the bracing, and then the last piece will be, the upper back position. I want to say more thoracic, but lats and thoracic.
Yeah.
And as we're working up in weight, it's kind of easier to kind of chip those off because of that. Now, that's not going to change no matter who I work with. It's always the same, because that's going to show me where the leakage is. It's going to show me where their stance should be. It's going to show all these different things. The question I have is, now the way I get that person to understand and feel it may be 100 different cues until I get the one that's going to work, especially when you're talking about the feet. You know, I may have to tell, actually, let's go into the hip position, like the bracing. I may have to tell somebody who's anterior tilted to arch really hard to get them into that neutral. But I got to be real careful of what I say so they don't go and tell somebody else, because that's not going to work for them. Where if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, you get all that, but then you've nuanced it down into what a gold standard from the cue is going to be, that you can get them there, but then you're going to have to, you can get them there by saying whatever you need to say to be able to get them there. But then you got to, if I understand you're right, then you have to transfer that into the cue that you want them to be able to use for that. Is that right?
So the gold standard is the technique itself.
Yeah.
The cueing we break down into 3 levels. So developmental cues are about building that gold standard. And we want those to be as one size fits all as possible, speaking to what we understand to be the biomechanical rules. Then we've got layers of cueing, because this is essentially coaching, right? Coaching is having an understanding of what you want to achieve and using whatever tools you have at your disposal with the person in front of you to get there. Our methodology is such that we're trying to, again, discount the individual until the point we need it. And if we're talking about a squat, the individualized aspects primarily are going to be the width and the angle of the feet and the width and the position of the hands on the barbell. Everything else is pretty global, pretty standardized, right? But there's nuance to this. So again, there's developmental cues, but we have layers of cueing. So the next layer of cueing would be feeling cues. So let's say we throw a developmental cue out there. So to I guess, use an example, rule number 1 in squats, where does the power come from? Muscles of the legs and hips. The way we express that power, we have to have a stable system. The whole knees in, knees out thing. We don't want the knees out. We don't want the knees in. We want them to be knees and go straight forward and back. What does that represent? Represents an isometric of the rotational aspects of the hips. So we don't want external rotation or internal rotation. We want both working equal and opposite each other to stabilize that joint, so the muscles moving it up and down can do what they need to do. So what's most people's problem on a squat? Knees going inwards, because the tendency when you push into the ground is to bias towards the quads. When you bias towards the quads, you want to move the hips in that direction. So we teach to twist the quads away from each other and to hold that all the way down and all the way up. That's the foundational cue. It's about speaking as close to both the biomechanical rule, but also geographically as close to the area of the body as possible. The next layer is that feeling cues. So it's using language to describe the expected feeling. And this is really important in building trust with the lifter, but also most of us, like you're presenting a seminar, you give someone a series of cues. The tendency for that lifter is to be, this is a great cue, I can really feel this is working. They go away. Everyone's brain tries to find comfort. Like, we don't like being uncomfortable. We don't like feeling different. So we start squatting, and pretty quickly they'll slowly revert back to where they were, because that's where they've been squatting for the last year or whatever it may be. So feeling cues are like, when you do this, you're going to feel this, which that's specific language. That's like the individualized aspect, which you wouldn't give to the next person to tell their friend and their friend and their friend. The lowest level of cueing is directional cues, which is like old school push your knees out kind of deal. You will use that in a circumstance where the person is physically unable to perform the top 2 as a last resort. So you might say, all right, I just need you to open your hips a little bit more in the hole, or push your knees out a little bit. Now see what you felt then, see how tight you felt your hips. That's the feeling I want you to chase. So immediately revert it back with the feeling cue, and then layer that again with the developmental cue. So there's nuance to it, right? Yeah. But ultimately, I mean, like, my belief is that cueing a squat should be as easy as cueing someone to blink. Yes. And if you think of cueing me to blink, I mean, what would you say?
Blink.
Yeah. But like, if you had to tell me what to do with my...
Close your eyes.
Close my eyes. Then what?
Open them.
Okay. Yeah. Why didn't you say, pull your top eyelid down towards your feet? Like, why didn't you say that? Because it's fucking stupid. Right? But if you said, close your eyes, and I did this, and then you said, open your eyes, and I'm like, oh, the IPF is corrupt. You're like, no, that's not what I meant by open your eyes. I meant literally open your eyes. Then you would have to find other language for me to understand that. And this is what people have done. And then you end up with cues that are so far removed from what you want to get somebody to do with their body. So like, what's a common cue for bench press? And no offense if you've done this or everyone else does this, but like, pull the bar apart.
Yeah.
Now, pull the bar apart is to do what? You feel scapular retraction, upper back tension, whatever you want to call it. And if I tell you to do this and you know how to bench, you go to the bench, you pull the bar apart and you squeeze your upper back really hard and you go, that's fucking fantastic.
If you know how to do it and what to
If you
feel.
know how to do it and what to feel.
Yeah.
The question we need to ask is, how can I get this wrong? Can I do the action of pulling the bar apart without feeling my upper back? If the answer is yes, well, then we have to go, what are we trying to achieve? Scapular retraction. How can I retract my scaps? Pinch between your shoulder blades. Okay, just fucking say that.
And then what about the bench accessories?
There's a lot. I'm huge on heavy rows, dumbbells, incline. I'm very big on tempo bench. There's so many that he throws at me.
Now with those, let's just say lower end accessories, are you worried about the weight at all? Or is it more just the muscle tension?
Muscle tension. I really don't care. I definitely put some effort into it, but I'm not trying to max out on them.
Yeah.
So,
you have no desire to do a 250-pound dumbbell row for a triple.
No, no. That point is more of like a bodybuilding for me at that point.
So just for those listening, and I'm kind of curious, what would be a weight that you would use for the dumbbell rows?
I mean, we want to go up to 100, so
There you go.
that's 100s I use.
Well, here's the point I'm going to make. So let's go back to when you were in college, just muscle fucking shit around.
Yeah.
How much were you dumbbell rowing that?
125. Yeah.
So that's the point I'm trying to make,
Yeah.
that I think a lot of power lifters kind of miss. Just because you can do it, kind of like muscle fuck it up, doesn't mean you should. Because if I follow up with that question and say, between those two rows, the 125 muscle fucking and what you do with 80s or 100 now, which one do you think actually helps you more and has more muscle tension?
Oh, the 100s, easy. That's not even close.
Yeah.
I was doing that just to show off the 125s.
Yeah. But if you had to, you could probably make the 70s work.
Oh, yeah.
Just slower tempo, flex harder.
Yeah. I've learned that over the years. I've learned like it's not always about the weight. It's just slowing it down. And the 100s, I manipulate, like when I do incline, I've learned like the tempo down and then pause and do reps. And I've got like pumps off of doing it like that. So just doing things like that, because we want to go up, like I said, to 100. So
yeah,
I've learned how to like manipulate, make it harder for me to make it more stimulate more muscle growth for me.
I love this. And another aspect of that is, what was the last that you said, the inclines, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if we take the inclines and you're using that tempo and you're starting with that pause and you're starting to get close to failure, which is kind of what you want to do. Say you're 1 or 2 reps shy of failure and you got one more and you're about done. But if you wanted to, you could probably muscle fuck up another 5 or 6 reps. But instead of doing that, you just kind of let it fail, then rest it,
yeah.
Right? And this is a point I try to teach people when I have little clinics that I do, is sometimes they get a number for their accessories stuck in their head. 3 sets of 12. And they'll get to maybe 7 and it's almost done.
Yeah.
But instead of letting it be done, they muscle fuck it up to get to 12, but then still end up 5 or 6 reps shy of failure, because of that.
Yeah. And either getting up to self-hurt doing that. So it's just like, I'd rather, if I get to that point, I'd rather just put it down, give myself a minute or 2, recover, and finish on my my reps.
How did that finally click for you, that that's what you need to do? Because we all were. I mean, we were all, the people that did it that other way, but then it clicks through. Was it somebody just coaching the shit out of you, or was it the bigger lifts just take so much out of you that by the time you get to those?
Both. It basically had been Coach Sean just like being there and just like, you don't have to go hammer. The big lifts are going to kill you. Basically here, this is just like blood flow for you at this point. You don't have to go hard at these. I want you to put some work into it, but you don't have to like kill yourself. And once I learned that, I was like, okay, all right, this makes sense. And once I started doing that, it was just like, it clicked. And I've been like that ever since, honestly. And I try to teach people to do the same thing as well.
How well do they listen when you try to teach them that?
Some take it and some don't. I'm just like, all right, whatever. But like, you see what I do and you see how the results happen. So it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, another way to kind of look at it is the bigger lifts that your big lift and your secondary movement, right? They're pounding your joints. You don't need to pound your joints with the accessory work. All you're trying to do is the blood flow and the muscle work. And if you can take 40% of the weight off, but still, and actually have a better stimulus, which was what we're both talking about, well, why would you not? You know, that's what frustrates me with people. Like, why would you not?
Yeah, it's the easiest thing to do.
Just load it up there. So when you come in for if it's squat, when you come in for your bench session, you're going to feel like shit. You know, how's that work? You know, or it hurts the next squat session that's coming down the line. Sometimes I think they don't think of what's the next training day.
No, that's how I always think. I always want to I look at what I do, because I have everything, all my training sessions, I can see everything. I always like to set myself up for my next training session, so there's no there's no errors or anything. There's nothing that's going to hold me back.
Yeah.
I can't do my next training session at full 100% always.
So you know, going in, there's so much energy in the tank that you have, you know, in session A, because session B, you know, a rest day than session B.
Yeah.
You need to pull that energy back up to be able to at least do that session. So if you drain the tank, you got to hope to hell that in one day, you're going to fill it back up. But if you only drain it by 70%, 80%, then it's easier to fill the tank back up again.
Yeah. And and that took me a long time, because I've been just want to push gas on the pedal, just go at hard as fuck every time, and and it took Sean to teach me to we could pull back, because you go so hard already on the main lifts, or we do so much that's gonna let's go with the bodybuilding style. That's the style, and just blood flow to get your body ready for everything.
And for those listening, you're actually working harder, because the main lift is you become more proficient at it. You know, when you come out of the bottom of the squat, it's never really this, but this will explain. 100% of your muscle fibers are all hitting hard, where 7 years ago, it was it wasn't hitting it, bam, it wasn't hitting in one throw. It was it's just all over the place, right? So it's harder to recover from. It's harder to recover from a sprint than it is a jog. Yeah. Right. So it's kind of like that. When you start to develop that technical efficiency and the ability to, flex through like that, it's way more exhausting, for you, for a lifter. If it's not in there, it's easier to recover from, because the lift is a clusterfuck and it's not really locked in, but you're also squatting way less. You see,
that's the thing.
So the load's a factor, then the ability that you're able to recruit more efficiently is a factor. All these things are factors that lead into that recovery, where it's an interesting thing, because you can see the same workload on somebody with half the strength. And say if you do 2 triples heavy, you're fucking cooked, right? You're like, do we need to do these back down sets? What exactly are they going to do this didn't already do? Then with the accessories, really? What the hell is this going to, this is why they get pulled out as you peak for me, right? Where somebody that's half the strength that doesn't have that neural efficiency
they need it
8 sets of 3 hard and still do all that other shit. Then they can look and say, dude, what the fuck? You can only do 2 sets of 3. I'm like, whoa, there's 2.
Look at my tonnage compared to your tonnage. Mine's still higher than yours.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on here. Beyond that, with your with your deadlift, right? Because it's your nemesis. I don't want to make it sound negative. It's at some point you're like, fuck it. What's the point? Do I just give up on it? What's been your plan for that? And then how are you going to approach it for the off season leading into the next meet? Because I'm pretty sure you guys aren't sitting there thinking, oh, we're going to find this technique and put 80 pounds on your deadlift.
No, it just honestly because squat and bench is so easy. We'll still work on those things, but we'll put those on the back burner because they click very quickly for me, and we'll work more on the pull and just try to just find consistency. Now I'm going to switch over to conventional and just see what we can do and kind of just play with it and see if we can, maybe that might be more, maybe we can probably be a conventional puller. If not, we can switch you back to sumo, because usually sumo helps with your conventional helps with your sumos, and kind of just work with different things and see what we can do.
What lessons could you see coming from the football side that could help enhance the strength and conditioning private sector, powerlifting, strongman, strength sports?
I think
it's almost the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, having been through a strength and conditioning program as a player, you know, getting into bodybuilding and strongman and powerlifting, I don't want to say it was easy, but I became just a grittier, harder edged human by going through football strength and conditioning, you know, being disciplined, being coached hard, going through a system where you had to meet a standard, and the standard was the standard. And if you deviate from the standard, you're going to fucking pay for it. You know, that instills just a certain mindset and a certain grit into you that a lot of people who haven't gone through it don't have, you know. And like in football, if you showed up a minute late for your lift, like, you're getting punished, or the group was getting punished. You know, you are going to give full effort, or you are going to get brutally called out. And that elevates you. Now you've got a fire under your ass. You've got your teammates around you who you're competing with, and they're pushing you. Your coaches are pushing you, and you know you can't fall out of the line, because then you're going to be the outcast. You're going to be the weak link. And I think that drove all of us to elevate our own effort and game, and, you know, getting out of that, you know, like working with a diet coach, like working with Justin, he's talking about, oh, we'll have this, you know, cheat meal so you don't cheat on your diet. I'm like, I'm not going to cheat on my diet. Like, what are you talking about? You give me a diet to follow, I'm going to execute this no matter how hungry I get. Like, it was the idea of just deviating from this plan a coach gave me was like a foreign concept to me. And I think that's something that was instilled in me in football. And, you know, you walk into a powerlifting gym, and this is something that I think, like, Westside just, and I've never trained at Westside, so I don't want to speak to it, but from the outside looking in, it seems like the culture there was almost the thing that really separated you guys, was just being in there with some just hard-nosed guys who were pushing each other and just creating this high competition environment. And I'm sure there was a standard. Like, if guys were showing up late or guys weren't putting in 100%, guys were, I'm sure, getting called out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that I'm sure it pushed you all to be better.
Yeah.
Right? And I think if you could have that in, you know, if you're a powerlifter or a strongman, if you have that environment when you're training where you're competing against guys, they're pushing against you, you've got this mindset of you know, just a harder edge, blue collar mindset, you know, and a standard in your mind to uphold, a standard that you apply to your training, to your diet, to the way you live your life. I mean, I think that would help guys in ways they couldn't imagine.
They're going to have to do it independently, though, because
that's the hard thing.
You know, that's going to be the harder thing, because it wasn't developed otherwise. So with the people that you're working with, that you see that is one of the weak links, you know, what are you suggesting them to be able to develop that?
Well, you know, the people I'm coaching, I tried to, you know, and that was one of the hard things for me when I first got into this, was people who didn't have that mindset, people who were, you know, I didn't follow the diet this week, and I'd want to get mad. Like, I'd want to jump on them like I would with my players. But then, you know, you step back, you're like, all right, this is a different environment. But I try to just have a conversation with them and try to just make them understand, like, hey, you've made a commitment to this. Like, you owe it to yourself to put everything you have into this. And, you know, so I'm there as a coach. I'm there as that voice to try to push them and to hold them accountable. And I think that's one of the biggest assets that, you know, a coach serves to people in this situation is just the accountability factor. But as far as if you're not working with a coach, you don't have that presence to push you and to hold you accountable. I don't know if that's something you can really teach, to be honest. It was instilled in me at a very young age, and I just don't know anything different. And I think sometimes if that just hasn't been instilled in you, or if it's just not who you are, I don't know if you can truly just develop that in someone later in life.
So how do you plan on instilling this in your child?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'm never going to push my son into doing anything. Like, I don't want to force him into football or to lifting. Like, I want him to find something that he is passionate about. But once he has found that thing that he's passionate about, I hope that I can instill in him the mindset that trying just to be great at what you do. Like, that's... People need to do hard things. People need to be challenged. That's something that I need in my life. Like, I need to have something that's hard, that's pushing me, that I'm working towards, that I care deeply about, that I have to work hard for. So I hope I can encourage my son to find the thing that he's passionate about, and then just teaching him to understand that, or having the mindset to be great at that thing, and to love it, and to be willing to sacrifice for it. Now, how exactly I'm going to do that, I'll learn it over the years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but through your own story with football, this may come across the wrong way, but I think you're going to understand where I'm going. You never were 100% passionate about it. Right. So 98, 90, whatever it's going to be, you still had to be great at it. I think this is kind of where some of the disconnect is with people, is even if it was 80% or 70%, your effort's not changing, your intensity's not changing, your ability to want to be the best that you actually can at it's not changing just because it's not 100%. Because if people are chasing that 100%, I don't think they're ever going to find it in anything. Right. But that may dictate where that discipline and focus is going to be. Because you see them, because that whatever that gap percentage is, has a really fucking strong voice.
Yeah.
A stronger voice than the other one. You know, and that voice is like, oh, we don't need to do this, or, you know, we can push this meal to here, or, you know, whatever it's going to be. That's radically strong.
Yeah. You know, and with football, although it wasn't what I loved, I felt an immense accountability to my teammates or to my coaches. Like, I did give.
Yeah. I'm not saying that, you know,
I gave everything to it, and maybe I didn't love it, but, you know, I've got all these people who are counting on me. The stakes are so high. You know, I've got these coaches whose jobs are on the line if I don't perform. I've got, you know, a team, we're all playing for a championship. Like, I'm competitive in by my nature. Like, I'm not going to let these guys around me, you know, see me as a weak link or anything like that. So I had all these other motivating variables pushing me, even though, you know, maybe it's not what I truly love doing.
But your effort and your intensity and all the other wouldn't have been any higher if it was that 100%. That's kind of where I'm going.
Oh,
you see, that's where I'm going there. Is people are I think they look for that, you know, that 100% type thing. And first off, they assume that's going to drive them all the time, where that's not the case with any fucking thing that we do. Even with the strongman you're training, a lot of this stuff just sucks. Right? It just sucks, right? If it all was good, then, you know, it's a lie. Anyway that tells you that's lying. But the point I'm trying to make here is all the factors that go into being great are still there because you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise you wouldn't do it. Right? So that's the mindset that we're talking about, is if you're going to do something, then put in, and you're going to commit to it, then put in everything that you have to become the greatest that you can be at it.
Yeah. Otherwise,
don't fucking do it, or be it a hobby or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, no. And I agree with that. And, you know, nowadays I'm a very kind of all or nothing guy. You know, like you said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to fucking do it all out. Otherwise I can't just do a happy medium in my life. And I don't know if that's just it's just something in my nature, just personality, and just natural to certain competitors. I don't know if that's a thing that is taught and learned. Not everyone lives that way. That's for sure. Not everyone goes through life putting in 100% into anything or attempting to be great at anything.
Elaborate on that, right?
Sure.
So you'd have the effective reps, the effective sets, but then the volume, which would probably be in that order, right? The effective reps, the effective sets, and then the volume would be the way to cover that.
Absolutely. I think the first thing to look at is the concept of effective reps or effective sets. And that is like, how much stimulus am I getting out of this unit of volume? And the answer is context dependent. So when we look at the relationship between volume and hypertrophy, and then volume and 1RM strength gains, when we have like big meta regressions, we look at all the data we've been collecting for 30 plus years, we don't see the same relationship. So you get a diminishing returns effect in both, if you calculate this as number of sets per week per muscle or per lift. And the point of diminishing returns is way right shifted for hypertrophy. Like there's basically the idea of if you can do more and you can recover from it, and it's not causing other issues and other variables, like it's not making you pull down the intensity or proximity to failure, you're not pacing yourself, it may induce a increasingly less stimulus for hypertrophy. You're getting much more out of your first 4 or 5 sets per week. And, if you get up to 25 sets, it might be better than 15, but the relative difference of going from 1 set to 4 is more than going from 15 to say 25, right? So it's this increasingly worse return on investment is what describes the overall relationship. That happens way earlier for strength. And in research, a lot of the times it's not the kind of strength training we're thinking of. It's not singles, to 8. It's sets of like 9 to 10, and then they're testing 1RM strength afterwards. But we start to see that once you've done like 5 or 6 sets in a week, you're not getting much more out of it. But that's in the context of the research that we have, which is typically 6 to 12 weeks long. And we know, I would say, we know quite clearly that larger muscles produce more force. So we kind of are looking at the volume relationship in terms of long-term strength capacity, that's hypertrophy, and then peaking. If I think that the typical strength study where we're actually going to end in a 1RM and compare it to our pretest 1RM, the thing that's akin to is the peaking block or the prep block. It's the last 8 to 12 weeks before your meet. The hypertrophy work you do in that period is going to have very little direct transfer that's measurable over that time period to strength. And the additional volume on building work capacity, or doing a lot of, say, triples. It's not like if you did 1 triple on 3 days versus 3 triples on 5 days, it might be a little different, but it would be a lot less than most people think on average for people. So when we're talking about what is the key variable, proximity to failure and number of sets are our best big picture ideas around what is driving hypertrophy. And then load on the bar and number of sets with a way less effective number of sets in the short term, which is all the research we have. We have very few studies that are over even 16 weeks, right? So we don't know a whole lot about long-term strength development, but we can extrapolate from what are the determinants of strength. And if hypertrophy is important, if we accept that, then we kind of have to live in both worlds as a strength athlete. We need to think about really what I think periodization is best described as is an efficiency puzzle, right? It's, if I want to get as big as possible, that's going to take away from the specific work on the skills of strength that I need to do. So that I shouldn't do all the time, or I can't be a bodybuilder purely. I have to think about how do I develop that long-term muscle size while becoming an expert in these lifts, right? The bodybuilder game is very different, and we're not going to get there yet, because then it's just, the movement is just a vehicle for volume and intensity, right? So that means, okay, I need to come up with some system, and we have endless systems, and they're all potentially valid, and some might be better in different contexts. But so long as they produce long-term strength, then you're clearly growing enough. So what is an effective set for hypertrophy? Well, generally for hypertrophy, we know that singles, doubles, triples, even maybe sets of 4, they don't last long enough to have a long enough stimulus, really, even though they might be heavy, to be on equal footing to say a moderate or high rep set. We have enough comparisons between what we would describe as heavy strength training, like a 2 to 4 RM versus say an 8 to 12 RM versus say a 25 to 35 RM, where we go, listen, you're going to have to maybe make up by doing a few more sets if you want to get the same hypertrophy stimulus on a set to set basis. So an effective set for hypertrophy needs to A, have enough reps in it, and then B, need to be close enough to failure. And that actually adjusts based upon the load. If we think about motor unit recruitment, we look at either EMG studies or we make some inferences from some other types of data. When you lift heavy enough, everything is on. You have to recruit everything to just overcome that load. And when you're lifting heavy enough, the influence of proximity to failure is less for hypertrophy. So if you're doing, say, a set of 6, you could probably stop at 2, 3, maybe even 4 RIR, and that might be quite comparable to going close to failure on a set of 10 to 20, because you get to the same endpoint in different ways. If you do a set of 6 with a 3 RIR versus a set of 15 with a 0 RIR, in the end, you're both recruiting high threshold motor units. You're putting enough stress through them. They're probably going to grow. The way it occurs in a set of 15, 20, or 30 is that you're doing what's called motor unit substitution or motor unit cycling. So if you only have 60% of your 1RM on the bar, you don't need the whole motor unit pool to move it, right? So you're doing your reps, you're doing your reps, you're doing your reps, and a motor unit starts to go, oh, I'm getting a lot of fatigued fibers here. It'll actually turn off and let the rest of the motor unit pool do the work. And then that happens again. And eventually it's just trying to like substitute and cycle in these motor units. And you get to the point where you're on your 30th rep out of 30 and they're all done. So you can no longer meet the ATP demands to meet the force demands for the set to continue. That just occurs at a pace far faster than you can do it when you have to recruit everything immediately, because you can't substitute a motor unit out when you're doing a 6 RM. You need them all just to do one rep, right? So that is the difference, is that it kind of all counts when it's heavy enough. And another way to think of that is from a hypertrophy perspective is if I need to get reasonably close to failure, let's say everything from a 5, 6, maybe even 10 RIR if you're a novice counts, because it's heavier than getting off the couch if you've never lifted weights before, right? Then if I'm lifting with 80% of my 1RM and I can only do 10 reps, then all of my reps are a 10 RIR or lower, right? So effective reps, I think some people draw much too hard of a line in the sand that doesn't comport with the data. It is true that the closer you get to failure on a set-by-set basis, not in the context of a whole program, the more stimulating that set in isolation is for hypertrophy. But some people will go, and only the last 5 reps count. I'm like, well, actually, if you look at the data, it's like there's a positive relationship from all the way from 10 IR or to 0 IR. Is that true if we're talking about elite level powerlifters or elite level bodybuilders? Probably not, but I don't have the data on that. We haven't collected thousands of studies on these people. I'm trying, but we're not there yet, right? So we know the general direction of that relationship. The closer you get to failure in isolation, more stimulative. So the effective reps model in a very general sense is true. You're going to get more stimulus closer to failure. And then if you meet the constraints of what we would call that set of having enough reps and being reasonably close to failure, and then modifying it based upon load, we can call that an effective set. So in my mind, the way I often describe this is, hey, if you're lifting in, say, the 4 to 8 RM range, you can be at a 1, 2, 3 RIR, and that set is probably going to count pretty well. If you're in kind of like the 8 to 12 RM range, we have data, 1 to 2 RIR is probably equivalent to actually failing. After that, you probably want to err on the side of, say, 0 to 1 RIR, maybe even hit failure. And then there's also exercise interactions. Like you probably wouldn't want to do that on a squat or deadlift or bench. You probably want to choose something that's a little more isolation-based, machine-based. And then you have to think about, okay, well, what phase of training am I in? So you get all these variables that explode. But essentially, effective sets and reps for hypertrophy are pretty clear. Close enough to failure, last long enough to stimulate something. For strength, it is heavy enough to get a decent amount of transfer. And that's pretty much it, And then the effect of volume starts to diminish way earlier for short-term strength gains.
How do you prioritize if we're to take the squat and it's total wreck, right? So 5 things are wrong. So how do you prioritize what you're going to focus on? Because you kind of know not all 5 things are going to stick.
Well, I think the first thing I would go over for squatting is I want there to be the clarity that your upper body should create the stability. So that's everything from like your core strength to the placement of the bar, your breathing, and then of course like how your grip
tightness is locking it in. If you're having to like wrestle the bar, so to speak, because you're not tight, then when you start to descend, you're going to have to enlist your legs to balance. And if your upper body is, just locked in like a battering ram, and there's the bar 100% transferred down to, let's say, your belt, and you're just a solid mass, you're creating stability. So now your legs can just move. They can be flexible to go deep. They can be powerful because they don't have, it's like if you floored it in your car and then your car is going sideways, you're going to let off the gas. You don't want that when you're lifting. You want to know that I'm going to be able to put the pedal down, put full power into the lift, and I'm going where I expect the bar to go. Not, oh shit, now I'm tipping or I'm, sitting back too much. So if you have to create the stability from your upper body by, wrestling, then that's the first thing I want to get somebody to be like locked in. And that goes from bar placement, wrist position, elbow position, breathing, kind of, how you walk out. And then also like if you're doing a set of reps, kind of being really focused on the fact that you should never, like, let's say you do a set of 5, you're always going to get out of breath after number 4, and you have to take the time to like get a solid breath locked in for 5. You should never get to 4, panic, and then rush into the 5th one to get it over with, because you'll struggle. If you lose your brace, you're going to precipitously like drop off in power as you try to reverse. So to me, like, that's the critical thing. I've watched a lot of lifters. There are very few lifters who look unstable under the bar, but they just have so much quad strength that it's fine. Most lifters, your ability to stabilize the weight is what enables, full use of your lower body strength.
This is interesting to me because if you're conducting a seminar and you're working with somebody, usually they're all starting with a bar, right? That's where you start the cueing and setting them all up. I've always taught from the feet up. You teach from the head down. So I'm really interested in this, right?
Yeah.
So how do you walk them through that? So they pick the bar up, or actually they're getting under the bar. So what are you actually cueing them and trying to get them to do?
The first thing is always the bar placement, I would say. So, getting the proper bar placement. Let's say we're talking about like low bar. There are people who are high bar, and when I watch them, I'll say, actually, you should stick with that. That looks fine. And there are other people who I'll teach them low bar on the spot. They've been doing high bar. And so that really kind of starts with, being able to retract your shoulders. In order to retract your shoulder blades, you must achieve a certain degree of like thoracic extension. So in other words, if your chest is down, it's impossible to really retract your shoulders fully. So if you can extend your, thoracic spine or chest up, you can squeeze the shoulders together. So that's kind of the key. And then, teaching them how to space. In my technique, I would typically, you'll see a lot of people who like kind of wrap over the bar. And I always found that when I had my hands high, my elbows high, when I was grinding, I would just roll the bar onto my traps. And now you have a terrible squat. So for me, I got to the point where I needed to really have the elbows pulled all the way down, almost under the bar, the wrists back. And of course, that means you need wrist wraps. So to really get into that position, like once you're there, I would say like you should be able to hold the bar really efficiently without really trying that much. Just don't let go. And you should feel like you're just locked in, like you're stuck. And so that's really where I'm getting. It's sort of, you don't want to be so tight in your grip width that you're like, you're under the bar and now it's actually, you can't really get tight, but not wider than you have to be. And for most people, you're showing them go a little tighter, and you'll feel like if you just get it right, now you're locked in and it's very efficient.
As you work down, how do you teach them to brace?
So for me, I always have taught that when you breathe, you should not have this like visible shrug. I mean, if you can shrug 800 pounds, more power to you. But the breathing should come from the diaphragm or your stomach. And so to me, the breathing was always like, and especially if you're, doing reps, you need to be able to take more than one breath. So it was always sort of like, I like the cue of like, you're sipping the air, like you're kind of hyperventilating or breathing through a straw maybe, but it'll be like, and so there's just kind of that bearing down. And I would show them that if you brace your abs correctly, your pelvis and your sternum should actually move about a half an inch closer together. It's sort of akin to like if somebody punched you in the stomach, would you go like this
Yeah.
or would you suck in? It's like you would flinch, like you'd crunch, you'd make a wall with your abs. And that's how I would kind of teach it. So you should get the breath, lock in where you'd feel like there's like that half inch of kind of crunching. And then, you know, I would want to know, do you feel like you can feel like if the weight sort of settles, that the weight of the bar can kind of transfer to your abs, which of course are supported by your belt. And so that makes me feel like I can just settle the weight onto my belt. And then for me, my squat technique was to basically allow the knees and femurs to kind of move out of the way so my belt or stomach could just kind of fall down the middle. And so that all stacks, basically you're like sort of stacking weight on your back, on top of your stomach, on your belt, and then letting your hips and legs kind of just move out of the way so I can just go straight down with my belt, which
Did you find when you go that way that the rooting takes care of itself through the feet?
I think so. I didn't always like using a cue of like kind of twisting your feet into the ground or spreading the floor. You know, if you see like those shows with like an obstacle course where the dude's like jumps up and spreads his feet onto two walls. I was always kind of like, we're not quite doing that. It's really more that we just want the adductors or the inner thighs to just kind of not resist, to kind of move out of the way. Not so much that we want the abductors or like the outer hip muscles to create this like wedging. So for me, that was kind of the idea. I want the hips to open to kind of get out of the way, but not to kind of create this like horizontal like leveraging. So I know that's not how everybody squats, and I think that's okay. But for me, I guess the way that I would want to squat is if I looked at a side view of myself when I'm at, let's say, at parallel, and this could be at any position during a squat, if you're videoing and you freeze frame yourself. But if you drew a line through the bar down, this sort of represents the force of gravity. And first off, that should travel down and intersect your arch of your foot so that the center of gravity is over your arch or the center of your foot. If it's over your toes or your heels, you're inefficient. If it's beyond your toes, you're going to lose your balance.
Oh, yeah.
You're walking. And so when you get down to parallel, though, that line should intersect your thigh close to the center. And that way you have a balance of quads and hips. Now, everyone's going to have different strength balances. But for me, I always wanted it to be like 50-50. I want to have a lot of quads and I want to have a lot of like glutes. So the further your, let's say, if you have 100% of your femur, the more of your femurs behind that line, the more you're hip dominant, using your hips and back. The more of your knees are in front, then the more you're quad dominant. Now, a lot of people are taught to not let your toes go over your knees. What that does, outside of like sort of the emotional sort of like repetition of hearing that as you get into lifting, is it's just literally like how much torque are you placing on the knees versus the hips. Whatever torque you place on the knees is going to be quads loading, and whatever torque you place on the hip is going to be glute and lower back. And so to me, it just makes sense to distribute the weight onto the body parts as efficiently and equally kind of as possible. I always want to train all the weaker areas. So for me, I was much more early on in my lifting. I was much more like hip dominant. So I'd sit back and lean over a lot. And it was only once I started really seeing, like the first time I went to Russia, I saw all these lifters hitting huge squat world records and having enormous quads. Like I saw one lifter, Konstantin Pozdiev, we're like benching, and I walk off the platform and he walks up, and I walk past him and I see his quads, and I actually did a triple take. I was like, the muscle that in his quads hanging over his knees so much, I was like, I've never seen that before. And so sure enough, he goes on at like 215 pounds. He squatted 815, narrowly missed 859. So this was like the world record at the time. And it was really impressive.
What time frame should that person be realistically thinking that it's going to take for that tendon to be strong enough to handle the maximal loads?
For surgery? For surgery on a tendon. So I tend to really, I tend to be very depressing, and I like to give people worst case scenarios just so that way they can be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Tendon reattachment, back to, normal training, you're looking like months to even up to a year. There's not a whole lot, the blood supply to tendon is not that great. And so it is going to take quite some time for you to work that tendon and make sure that tensile strength gets slowly increased over time. So it can heal adequately, but it's going to take some time.
I would say the longer time period would be what you'd want to tell people.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm going to be saying, you tell me 6 months, like, no, bitch, I'm going to do it 3.
Yeah, so at least
I'm going to do it 1. If you say 12, I'm going to say 6.
Exactly.
I'm going to change it in that way.
I would put it even more pessimistically than that, or just differently. And this is going to float right into what Crystal's going to architect as kind of the comeback plan.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, forget about heavy benching. No, seriously, just don't you even worry about that. There will be a time sooner than you think that you're going to get back to it. But you're thinking about it all wrong. What you want to do next is put in the quality work to the process of coming back. Your question isn't, when am I going to go heavier again? It's, what am I doing next week and how do my muscles and my tendons feel? When you hit all the right checkboxes and do all the phases of quote unquote rehab or return to performance that we're going to be talking about, when you hit each phase and you're successful, we have sort of metrics of how it's supposed to look and feel that you get to move on to the next phase. So your first concern is, I want to return to a normal range of motion.
Yeah.
With fundamentally no pain or minimal pain. Then the next phase, Crystal's going to talk about what it is, but basically it's establishing your ability to do repetitions with a decent load that's relatively close to failure, but high rep sets to rebuild the musculature and get tons and tons of small amount of tensile strength through the tendon to get it to start re-architecting itself. Once you're competent at that, and we'll have some definitions of what that means, then you get to ask the question of, okay, now what's my next phase? So that's what I mean by forget. It's like, it was a stupid analogy. Like fucking high school kid is like a dweeb or whatever. He's like, I'm in love with Stacy, the popular girl in my school. What do I do to get her? You look him up and down. You're like, motherfucker, forget about Stacy. Forget about Stacy. We're going to have you do physical fitness. I got a gay guy who's going to come in and look at your fashion because what the fuck? And then we're going to have a speech coach and you're going to do all this shit. Now, when you are ready, you'll know you're ready. But if Stacy does not exist, stop. No more Stacy. When you're ready, she'll be there for you. But that, you're asking the wrong question. Like, you need to focus on that next phase, because here's why that's a problem. And you've seen this a ton in your practice. You'll tell them a timeline and they do two things. One is they focus like crazy on it's just biding time. And they might not even do a lot of rehab. They might lay off training their chest altogether and just assume it's recovering and then get back to the shit in whatever 6 or 12 months you say. Or they'll do a combination of that and what you said, which is like, whatever that timeline is, I'm cutting it in half and then I'm biding my time. There's work to be done right now, and you earn the transition to the next phase if you complete the first phase. And there are like charitably at least 3 phases and probably more like 4 or 5. That's what I want. That's what Crystal and I want people to start looking at, is now that you're hurt, you have a different mission. Your mission is not to go bench heavy again. It's to do the rebuilding work so that you are in a body that can now ask the question of, now when do I bench heavy again? Oh, now that you're big and strong and you're doing sets of 5 and your tendons feel great, well, shit, you're like 6 weeks away from maxing out. Right. But you won't ask that question until you're ready for this shit. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense, because I'm the poster child of the opposite.
Same.
I have 2 prosthetics. I got a shoulder that needs replacing. I've torn everything off.
For sure.
In most cases, not acute, but because of rushing, I had shoulder surgery. I got a meet in 6 weeks. I'm fucking doing it. Right. And I can sit there and talk kind of with pride, but I'm fucked up. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I could have had 5 more years at the back end of my career, which I would have been able to express better strength than what I did in the time period I did have to express strength, but can look back and say with definitive fact that had I not done this stupid shit that I know most people listening will do, then I would have had bigger numbers at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah. So just a quick preview, and Crystal will dive into all these phases and get real specific on all the mechanisms and bullshit. The real question you should be asking isn't when I can bench for a max again. It's when can I do like sets of heavy fives again and feel fine. But that's not even the real question you should be asking, because the real question to get you to sets of five, you have to answer in the affirmative the question of when do I get to train at least like a bodybuilder again, sets of 8 to 12 with high volume and not feel like my pec is coming off. But you're not ready for that shit either, because before that you have to do sets of 20 to 30 reps with very close to failure to rebuild all that architecture and get your muscles buffed up back again. And that's not the question to ask even up front, because the real question is, how do I get my range of motion back so that I can do sets of 20 to 30 normally? That's 4 steps removed from benching heavy.
Right.
So people it's like jumping. It's like someone, like you teach someone a triple jump and they're like, what Olympics do you think I'm going to be peaked for? Like, are you out of your fucking mind? What are you talking about? Like, you have to jump through these hoops, not arbitrarily. You earn that next ability by completing that first task.
All right, so phase one.
Yeah, phase one, range of motion. I feel like we've sort of, in that specific exercise. And then the next one is putting in.
Should this be pain-free range of motion?
So that, I have ideally, yes, it would be pain-free. I know that there is some literature that talks about having a pain analog scale, like having, a rating scale. There is some tolerance for up to, a 5 out of 10 in severity.
Holy shit.
Where, hamstring injuries, Achilles tendinopathy. And they found that even that is tolerable. Like, people can actually progress and heal. But the nuance to that is, one, the pain should subside over the next day. And 2, if you look at it from a week-to-week basis, the pain and stiffness does not increase over the weeks. So those are the 2 nuances to keep in mind. Because everyone's like, oh yeah, I can just train 5 out of 10 and like BS my way through. So no.
Just to illustrate a counterexample of that, imagine you're 4 weeks into range of motion phase and people are like, how's it going? You're like, I'm in even worse pain now than after the surgery. Time to do reps phase, right? Like, no, Jesus Christ, no, you're less ready now than you were. But if you are in a little bit of discomfort and pain in week 1, but by week 4, you're good range of motion and it's way less pain, and someone's like, real talk, could you do a set close to failure of like 25 reps and not pull your shit off? You're like, yeah, for sure. Then you're probably good to go to the next phase. So it has to be a stable, low amount of pain that heals very rapidly. Like, here's another one to Kristen's first point. If 3 days later, your site is in worse shape after a workout for range of motion than it was the day after, too much. Take it down a notch and then ease back in afterwards.
Yeah.
So with that pain, if it hurts on the first, second rep, but it doesn't hurt on the 18th, 19th.
Very good news.
Good.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's keep going with that. And I've had that happen all the time, even without an injury, squatting the bar, doing something. And, if it's getting better progressive, over those times, then keep on.
Some people may not want to progress because it hurt on the first 1 or 2.
Totally.
And it's gonna hurt on the first 1 or 2. That's a big part of the rehabilitative process. And pain's not a signal to say stop. Pain's a signal to say, hey, think about this. And if after a few reps it feels better, and after a few weeks it's feeling better every week, and then at the end, preview, the way you know you're gonna go in the next phase is asking yourself, okay, what's involved in the next phase? And is my body ready for that? If you can answer that as a yes, you're good to go. If you can't, just keep going through the range of motion phase. It also depends on injury severity. If I tweak my calf a little bit, I could have 1 session where I do range of motion, 1 session where I go into heavier weights, and then 1 session where I'm back to normal. That's a week and a half. If I fucking pull my pec off the bone, bro, the range of motion phase could be 3 months in some cases.
But it's still the same phase. It's just condensed.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So then phase 2
would be reps. So now, and with a very light load, something where you're going to be doing sets of 25 to 30, very easy, reps in reserve, nothing. You're not trying to go, max out on, 30 reps, for X amount of sets. So just making sure that you've got a little bit of load on the bar and you're doing sets of, 25 to 30, 1 to 2 sets a couple times a week. And then you're going to have that same, pain. Is it pain free? Or if I do have pain, is it getting better over time or, progressively over time? So.
And then how long will that phase? I mean, what's the checklist for that phase to move to the next?
So can I do that? And my pain scale is either like, I'm ready to go, I'm feeling great. There's, my pec feels good, my joints feel good. I can move on. I can move on to the next phase. Mm-hmm. If I am having a little bit of discomfort, but it's getting better over time, you would still stay at that phase. And until, it is, closer to pain-free, then, you can move on.
Dude, nothing's as hard as spotting your older brother when he's going through puberty and you're not. Mm-hmm. That doesn't get more difficult than that. Like I remember, I have like these moments are like scarred in my memory. I remember I'd be upstairs playing like some sort of like nerd role playing game on the computer or whatever.
Zelda.
Maybe not Zelda. Maybe Morrowind or something like that. Real nerd shit. But I was like 11, so it cut me. Or 10. So give me a freaking break, But anyways, I would just hear like the live Pantera album or 101 Proof. That's like the only Pantera album we had. And it would just be like, Eric! I had to run down, yes! And he'd like, hop on my back. He just learned how to do like donkey calf raises. You know what I'm saying? And he would just like yell at me the whole time that I wasn't doing it right, even though I'm just like trying to sit on his back while he's doing donkey calf raises. Or he just learned like what a back extension is. So we take like a dinner table or whatever, and I have to like try to push his legs down to keep him tight and this back extension. And it's just, he'd just yell at me the whole time. And the pressure of him. And then me, like when I was wrestling, and he would just like make fun of me if I ever lost and stuff too. So it's just deep scarring, but I love him and I really appreciate this. But I feel like this is quintessential in the development of a young man in toughness. You know what I'm saying? Because it's coming from a place of love. Like he was my brother at the end of the day. Was he bullying me? Yes. But it's like, it wasn't ill intentions. He was just going through puberty and I wasn't. You know what I'm saying? He had to take it out on someone. Mm-hmm. But it helped me really embrace like getting yelled at.
So how does this work its way into every now and again you have to take a tsunami bar into a commercial gym?
We're getting to that. So I would lose in wrestling and he would make fun of me and it would just drive me crazy. Like, cause I think I just wanted to win so he didn't make fun of me. You know what I'm saying? So this is deeply scarred in my brain now, I think. That if I'm at a commercial gym and I'm going to go for like a deadlift or a squat or something, I can't fail. Because my brother will make fun of me.
But you can't see it.
Well, it's not even about him anymore. Yeah. He's always there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, like the old man in the gym, like fish-eyeing me as I'm going for the lift, I can't fail for him. You know?
Because your brother's voice.
Yeah, exactly.
So it all started when you were 10.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
I'm processing right now. I still can't correlate this to the old man in the gym, watching everything. I'm really trying to connect the dots with this whole id thing.
Yeah. Because he's going to judge me.
You think?
Yes. But if I hit it, then he'll be blown the fuck away.
All right. So if he sees you fail it, right, it'd be no different than if we're watching a newbie that's got kind of shitty bench failure, miss a 185-pound bench 8 times in a row.
Yeah.
Right. We look over there like, dude, you didn't get it the first 7. Like 8th is kind of fucking stupid. Right. Or then you see him get it on the 9th. Then you're like, fuck yeah, you got that.
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing. You're thinking that this guy is going to judge you if you miss it. Like, look at that big idiot.
Yeah.
But if he makes it.
Oh, but then if you do it. But it's hard to summon that. You know this. It's hard to summon that intensity and adrenaline more than once, You can do it.
Yeah.
You definitely can do it, but it's hard.
I call that, actually, Louis called that. zippy cards because I had ultra personality, which
Yeah.
they called zippy because the noise I made was zip.
Oh, nice.
Zip,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it's, he tried to explain this to me one time that I only had 3 zippy cards before I was done.
Yeah.
Right. So if it was in a training, use
Yes.
it wisely. But if it was in a meet, I had to be real careful because
Yeah.
there's 9 attempts.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
and the deeper I go into that mindset, the harder it is to recover.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
throwing up afterwards because you're summoning all the demons and shit, and then the demons got to come out. So it's managing the zippy cards.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
only so many times you can do it. But that's if you're talking about the right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Now the other
100%,
strains
yeah.
are a little bit different because you don't need to go that
Yes.
deep and that hard.
But I
you
like the
still
zippy
have-
card lifts. you know
Yeah,
what
the
I mean?
zippy card
Those
lifts.
are the best.
Yeah.
The other ones are, you take them when you can't get the other. Right? But that's, if you're trying to figure out the system, like when are you getting the zippy cards versus the, the soup, whatever, the different noises. But that's because when you go to the gym, like people say too, you can't always progress in weight. You can't do that. You're going to burn out or you're going to hit a wall. It's like, no, you won't, dude. You just got to change it up. Listen, I saw those. I was like, fuck yeah, man. Weight releasers, the bands, all the tsunami bar and all that kind of stuff too. Like, yes, you'll hit a plateau, but you can always just spice it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? To make it a totally different animal. And then it's not like you have to change the lift per se. You just change a mechanism of the lift and the freaking progress is endless. Is it going to happen overnight? No, but it's...
Well, a lot of times when you change it enough too, you don't even know if it's good for you.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah.
So it sets a new benchmark because you fucked it so many ways with 8 bands and chains and weight releasers. You're like, I don't even know if this is good.
But it's not bad.
But you push really, really hard.
And it's not bad. And it's better than not pushing really, really hard.
Yes.
In my opinion, yeah.
All right. So you mentioned, this disastrous event that your brother cast on you, which ended up being a positive. So if you were to give a speech to elementary school kids, what would be 3 takeaways that you'd want them to have? Because as a wrestler, maybe you did do this, speak to kids and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't.
Dude, the most important one, I don't know.
Keep in mind, we're talking elementary kids.
We don't even need 3. This is the most important one. This is what everyone needs to understand. Elementary kids, be damned. Okay, I'm talking. Well, let's give them some tips. We'll give everyone some tips. And that's, and this, if you want to talk about from wrestling, let's talk about from wrestling. But this is for anything. I've lost so many matches in wrestling. I had a great swing single, a great shot, but I was always hesitant to do it because I didn't want to freaking miss it and then get gassed out and then I would lose that way. But I would end up losing anyways because I wouldn't go for the shot that I had. I had a great shot. If I would have just taken it more, it's like Michael Jackson. Yeah, it's like Michael Jackson's quote. You miss 10 out of the shots you don't take, right? Michael Jackson.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Jordan. Yeah. Same thing.
I just love Michael Jackson.
Yeah, both famous.
Yeah. Both iconic. Okay. But anyways, like, I'll look back at that and it's like, damn, man, who knows what would have happened if you just tried, right? And it's the same thing in the weight room too. I had to really change my mindset because a lot of times, like, if I was feeling, kind of fatigued and stuff, it's like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I won't try because I don't think I can do it. But at the end of the day, my wife had to tell me. She's like, what's the worst that can happen? Like for a deadlift, for instance. Now, if we're squatting or benching, what's the worst that can happen? You'll probably tear your shit. But for a deadlift, like, it's pretty easy to go for it. And if you fail, like, you're not going to get hurt unless you're like really like hitchy with a terrible form, which I've done plenty in my life. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, listen, if you had a goal, just go for it. No matter even how those warm-up sets are feeling, as long as the safety parameters are in check, okay? Freaking a spotter or like the safety's on a rack or something like that. Because at the end of the day, are you failing if you're trying? I don't think so, because you're still trying something that's bigger and better than you've ever done before. And you learn from your failures, and now you know what you can do when you feel shitty, or now you know, like, so for instance, when I was deadlifting one time, I was like, I don't think I can do it. My wife told me, just freaking just sack up and do it. I'm like, okay, I'll try. And I got it to like my like knee level, like, and I couldn't do it. God damn it. I knew I shouldn't have tried. But then I had to take a step back and I had to be like, why is that a bad thing? I knew I felt like shit. My body felt like shit. And even feeling like shit, I got it to like the knee level. And if I would have just not tried in the first place, I wouldn't have known that would be possible. So then the next time I did it, I just waited till I was a little bit fresher, gave myself more recovery. And I was like, well, fuck, man, if I'm fatigued and lethargic and get it to my knee, I can absolutely do this when I'm fresh. And I feel like a lot of times people can be like, oh, just do better programming. I don't think so, man. I think there's more to it. I think it's the mindset. A lot of times people defeat themselves mentally before they even try for shit. Like you might be like, oh, my max is X amount of pounds. But it could be up here, you know? And even if whatever your perfect programming or something like that, that perfect programming might be set off of your max being here. But that's why I love just the fucking enthusiasm, intensity, going for broke. Because if you're not failing, you don't really know where your bar truly is. And I feel like the people that avoid failure for the most part, you're freaking, you're shooting yourself in the foot.